Morning, children. Today we are going to discuss about another important concept in the plus 2 portion, that is biodiversity. Biodiversity means for life in the different forms. So already we discussed the introduction, but anyhow we have to go very depth information. We have to get the more information about biodiversity and how to protect biodiversity. This is all our responsibility. Why? Because every species on this earth, okay, very useful for the food chain and food webs by ecosystems. See now, 1992 biodiversity we are discussing. In 1992, UN Earth Summit, one meeting, that is 1992 UN Earth Summit. So defined biodiversity as the, what that is defined, UN Earth Summit defined biodiversity as the variability among variability. This word you should have to remember. What is that? Variability among living organisms from all sources. Variability among living organisms from all sources: terrestrial, marine, aquatic, ecosystems, ecological complexes. Okay, so in this all different forms of living beings are there, right? In the terrestrial land, so many organisms, marine, aquatic, ecosystems, ecological complexes, all these have different forms of the life. So that is only. So biodiversity has a variability among the living organisms from all the sources, like come on, not all sources, including what? Terrestrial, okay, they are included the which one? Terrestrial, marine, aquatic ecosystems and ecological complexes. Diversity within species, between species and ecosystem of a region. So this includes diversity within a species or between the species and ecosystems of a region. Within the species, between the species and ecosystem. So that is called diversity. In the species, within the species, between the species and in the ecosystem also the diversity will be there. That is also comes under biodiversity. Next, number of different organisms and their relative frequencies in an ecological systems constitutes the most important functional component of the natural ecosystem. See, I said or not, number of different organisms and their relative frequencies. Number of different organisms and their relative frequencies in an ecological systems and constitute the most important functional component of natural ecosystem. Most important component of the natural ecosystem. So this is a very, very important, most important functional component of a natural ecosystem. Next, what is the number of different organisms and their relative frequencies in an ecological systems and considers the most important functional component. All organisms are functional component of natural ecosystems. Helps to maintain ecological process, create soil, recycle nutrients, influence the climate, degrade the waste and control diseases. So like this, the number of organisms plays a very important role. So it all tells the index of the health and ecosystem. This all will tells the health of an ecosystem. So it provides an index of this all will be helps to maintain what you called this all. This all will be organisms involvement will be tell the what you called index of the health of ecosystem. So this is a most important. Next, the survival of human race depend on the existence and well-being of living life forms. Even the human should have to survive in the sense, okay, the survival of human race depends on the which one? Existence and well-being of all life forms, the biosphere. All life forms will support the humans. Otherwise, humans cannot survive. All life forms on the earth supports the humans. So that is the importance of biosphere called biodiversity. Once again, children, In 1992, UN Earth Summit defined biodiversity as a variability among living organisms from all sources like terrestrial, marine, aquatic ecosystems and ecological complexes. Diversity may be within the species or between the species and ecosystems of all region considered as a biodiversity. So different species are there also biodiversity. What you called and the different ecosystems also biodiversity, and within the species also biodiversity, genetic biodiversity, species biodiversity, ecological biodiversity. Like that biodiversity is there. Number of different organisms and their relative frequencies in an ecological systems and constitute the most important functional component of an natural ecosystem. And this what you called organisms helps to maintain ecological process, create the soil, recycle nutrients, influence the climate, degrade the waste and controls the disease. This all indicates the index of the health of an ecosystems. Even survival of human race depends on the existence of life forms in the biosphere. Existence and well-being of all life forms in the biosphere. Survival of human race depends on the which one? Existence and well-being of all life forms of the biosphere. So these are all the things you should have to remember. Every organism, every life form is a very useful in the ecosystems. Next, concept of biodiversity. What is concept of biodiversity? This is a most important point to remember. Concept of biodiversity. The term biodiversity was first introduced by or popularized by Walter Rosen. 1986. The term biodiversity was introduced by Walter Rosen in 1986. Assemblage of different life forms he developed. What he called, he assembled the diversity of at all levels of biological organization from population to biomes. What he called, from populations to biomes he developed. This is a very important point. The term biodiversity was introduced by Walter Rosen. Okay. What is a biodiversity? Is an assemblage of different forms of the life. Assemblage of different life forms is called biodiversity. Each species adapted to live in its specific environment. So each species is adapted to live in the specific environment. Suppose water living animals have what specific adaptations. Terrestrial, deserts, they have some special adaptation. Like that, assemblage of different life forms will be considered as a biodiversity, but each species adapted to live in specific environments. Now, the change in the climatic conditions reflects the distribution and pattern of biodiversity. Climatic conditions are changed in the sense that will be affects of which one? Conditions. Okay, reflects the biodiversity. This is a very important. Climatic conditions are very important. Reflects the biodiversity in our planet. Right? The number of species per unit area declines. The number of species per unit area declines. Per unit area declines from which one? Tropic levels to which one? Tropics to towards the poles. You know very well, tropical area to poles region, if you migrate, if you go, the number of species per unit area will be decline. For example, you see the tundra, taiga of northern Canada, Alaska, northern Europe and Russia possess less than 12 species of trees. How many species? Less than 12 species only. So if you go to the tundra regions, if you go to the taiga regions of northern Canada, Alaska, so these all are cool areas, polar regions, near poles. Northern Europe and Russia possess less than 12 species of trees. So from where to where, if you move tropical to poles, if you go, less number of species, only 12 species only will be there. Means climate is climatic conditions are the most important. Climatic conditions are very, very important, very useful. Okay, for what? For species. If the climate conditions are bad, there is less species on this earth. Next, levels. Okay, now come to the temperate forest of the United States. Temperate forest of United States are 20 to 35 species of trees, while the tropical forest here 12, they are in the tundra regions. Here 20 to 20 35 in the temperate forests, while the tropical forest of Panama land over, you know very well, 110 species of trees in relatively small area. 110 species means you can estimate. So while you are going to the up, less tropical region to going up in the sense less, but in the tropical region how many? Come on, tropical forest of Panama all over 110 species of trees in the relative small area. Now, like this, climate is plays a very important role in the concept of biodiversity. So, who is the person first introduced the term biodiversity? Who is the person? Walter Rosen in 1986. So, next concept is there. That is a very important concept. That is about levels of biodiversity. What is that one? Levels of biodiversity. Edward Wilson, who is a scientist, Edward Wilson popularized the term biodiversity. Edward Wilson popularized the term biodiversity. That is important. So, to describe the diversity at all levels of biological organizations, from population to biomes. What is that? Edward Wilson popularized the term biodiversity, and to describe diversity at all levels of biological organization, from population to biomes. Biological organizations from population to biomes. There are three levels of biodiversity. What are the three levels of biodiversity? Genetic diversity, species diversity, community or ecosystem diversity. What is called? Genetic diversity, species diversity, community or ecosystem diversity. These are all the things you should have to remember. Genetic diversity, species diversity, community or ecosystem diversity. These three are there mainly in our what is called three levels of biodiversity. So genetic, gene level. What is the genetic diversity? Number of types of genes. For example, mango, how many varieties are there? Mango, we eat, some are juicy, some are flushy, some are what you call round, some are circle, like some are different shape, like that. In the mango itself, how many types of mangoes means those all are genes. So that kind of varieties. Rice also, that is called genetic diversity. There are how many levels of the biodiversity is? In the biodiversity, how many levels are there? So genetic diversity, three levels of biodiversity. Genetic diversity, species diversity, community. Genetic diversity means number of types of genes will be there. Okay, children. So what is the total concept of this chapter? Life in the different forms. Each will be depend on another one. So one will be attacked by some harmful enemies also, that will be directly or indirectly affect others. So all are important. All living beings, all the life forms are important and will depend each other, will support each other in the biodiversity. That is only major criteria of the biodiversity, and in this climatic conditions plays a very important role in the biodiversity. Why? More biodiversity when the climatic conditions are good, less biodiversity in the polar regions. That is only the points are there in this biodiversity chapter. Okay, first, once we are discussing once again the important need related points, we will discuss. In 1992, UN Earth Summit defined biodiversity as the variability among living organisms from all sources, including terrestrial, marine, aquatic ecosystems, ecological complexes. So this all comes under which one? The biodiversity only. Ecological complex, which they are the part. This includes diversity within the species. This includes diversity within the species, between the species, means species diversity, between the what you called species and ecosystem of a region. It reflects the number of different organisms and their relative frequencies in an ecological systems and constitutes the what you called most important functional component of natural ecosystem. So both are, this all are important. It will be depend on each other. That's why most important functional component of an natural ecosystem. What are these all different organisms and their relative frequencies in ecological systems? Helps to maintain ecological processes to create the soil. Okay, helps to maintain the ecological processes to create the soil. Next, recycle the nutrients. Okay, next, influence the climate, degrades waste and control diseases, index of health. This is important. Index of health of an ecosystem. The survival of human race depends on the existence of well-being of all life forms, the biosphere. So the survival of human race depends on the existence and well-being of all life forms, plants and animals, the biosphere. So these all are interdependent. See, good organisms and the relative frequencies in ecological systems constitutes the help to maintain ecological process, create the soil, recycling nutrients, influence the climate, degrade waste, control diseases, index of the health of ecosystem. So this all will be tell the index of good health ecosystem, including humans also. Survival of humans race depends on the existence and well-being of all life forms, including plants and animals. So plants are good, we are good. Animals are good, we are good. So that will be including life forms on the biosphere, in the biosphere. The concept of biodiversity. The term biodiversity was introduced by Walter Rosen in 1996. Assemblage of different life forms. Each species is adapted to live into specific environment. So climatic conditions reflects the biodiversity. Species per unit declines from tropic towards the poles. You know very well. Climatic conditions are very important. Reflects the biodiversity. Species per unit area. Species per unit area declines from tropic towards the poles. Tundra, taiga, what do you call? Tundra, taiga of northern Canada, Alaska, northern Europe and Russia possess less than 12 species of trees. Which one? Tundra. You see the world map. Tundra, taiga of northern Canada, Alaska, northern Europe and Russia possess less than 12 species of trees. Temperate forests of the United States have what happened? How many temperate forests of the United States? Temperate forests of the United States have 20 to 25. How many? 20 to 25 species of trees, while the tropical forest of Panama have over 110 species. Means what is going on? Good, bad climatic conditions, 12 species. Temperate forest, okay, normal, 20 to 35 species. What about in the tropical forests? 110 species of trees in relatively small area. Levels of biodiversity. Edward Wilson popularized in the term biodiversity. So, don't confuse. Rosen term introduced the biodiversity. Biodiversity term introduced by Walter Rosen. Edward Wilson popularized in the term biodiversity. So, and also what he done, very very important. Biodiversity describes diversity at all levels of biological organization. All levels of biological organizations. From population to biomes. Okay. So, in the there are three levels of biodiversity. Populations to biomes. This point you have to remember. All levels of biological organization from population to biomes. Popularized by Edward Wilson, given information about all levels of biological organizations. Now, in the biodiversity, three levels are there: genetic diversity, species diversity, community diversity, or ecosystem diversity. Genetic diversity will tell number and types of genes. Number and types of genes.